Hey there, fellow citizens of the internet. Welcome to the Kabandana podcast. Today, I have with me Kelvin Palmieri, and we're going to be talking about podcasts, podcasts about podcasts, how to create podcasts, how to create businesses, how to persevere in an area that is, well, just inundated with a lot of content, a lot of competition, and an emerging media, and how to search through all the noise to find the thing that you're trying to get to. So without any further ado, Kelvin, welcome to the Kabandana podcast.
Moses, thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited to talk about podcasting on a podcast. That's a dream come true. So let's see where we go today, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you have a podcast. How long have you had your podcast? What got you into your podcast? And let's just start with that.
So I actually have two podcasts, believe it or not.
Okay.
So at this point, I have two podcasts. But the big one, the one that we're more known for, is Next Level University. I started it in 2017 just because I was interviewed on a YouTube show. It was like an hour and a half interview. We got to the end of it, and I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. That hour and a half went by in what seems like 5 minutes. If I could do that for a living, I would never work a day in my life. That would be amazing. Yeah. One of my buddies said, well, there's people that do, and there's people out there that do that for a living. So I went home, I went on YouTube, I graduated YouTube University and figured out what do I need, and I went on Amazon and I ordered all the stuff. And transparently, in the beginning for me, it was just curiosity. I wanted to have deep conversations with deep individuals, and that was it. I started in 2017, audio only, no video, learned how to audio edit. I learned how to do intro and outro and all that stuff. And yeah, that was it for me. I just wanted to try my hand at something I had never tried before.
Okay, wow. And you're, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, you're 6 years in.
6 years.
So were you a natural conversationalist then? Before...
I don't know if I was a natural conversationalist, but what I do think I had that might have been more rare is I do believe I was a deeper thinker. Not from an intelligent standpoint necessarily, but I remember long before I had the podcast, I did a video on Facebook before there was Facebook Live, and the title of it was, "Do You Really Deserve to Be Happy?" And my thesis in this, what was pretty much a solo podcast episode at the time, was my deep belief is that you deserve what you work for. And unless you're working really, really hard and diligently and consistently and intentionally for happiness, I don't believe I deserve to be happy if I'm not working for it. I don't believe I deserve to be successful or deeply in love if I'm not working for it. That was a podcast episode long before the podcast was a thing. So I do believe I was very curious about the way people thought, but I wouldn't suggest that I was a natural or maybe ahead of the curve conversationalist.
Yeah. Okay, because there might be a misconception that, in order to have a podcast, you got to be verbally acute. You have to, be a natural conversationalist. And you're saying, well, maybe not so. So you went to YouTube University, and I reckon that anything that you type on YouTube, you're going to have just all kinds of answers, all kinds of videos. And you could spend literally an entire day, 24 hours, going through all kinds of videos that will not give you the best advice as far as starting a podcast or whatever it is that you're trying to look into. So how did you comb through all the nonsense videos? Like if you're very new to the medium of podcasting, and someone is saying, get this microphone, another person saying, get this microphone. Like, how did you comb through the information that wasn't quite accurate from the information that is accurate when you are new to this field?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of it for me, it depends on the way the advice or the information is given. So one of the reasons I have a really nice setup, and if you're just listening to this, you won't see it, but I have a really nice camera and I have multiple lights and I have a backdrop and I have things in my backdrop. The reason is because I understand that the words I say are only as important as the credibility you believe I do have. That's one of the ways when I'm looking at videos, I'm going to take the advice of the person who looks like they're way ahead of me, not the person who looks like they're behind me. That's just a human psychological thing that we do. So that's part one. I would always go to the videos that had the most views. They were somebody who had a track record of knowing what they were saying. They were somebody who had an area of expertise within what I was looking for. That was part one. And then part two, I'm a very messy action person. So I don't look for all the answers. I look for the first letter of the alphabet I'm trying to get into, and then I just try to start and then figure out from there. There's usually one bottleneck to getting into something. Once you figure out that bottleneck, that's good enough for me to get in there and try to figure out, okay, what's the next bottleneck going to end up being? So you really can only take the advice and then test the advice. And once you take the advice and test the advice, now you understand that was really good advice. Let me go back to that person. That was really not good advice. Let me go find someone else. So it's almost building trust with content.
Okay. So one, you looked for people that already looked like the kind of person that you want to see yourself in X amount of time. And then you took what they said, put that into practice, analyze the results, and figure out whether to continue on that path or to shift.
Yes. I am somebody who, there are people who are ready, aim, fire. There are people that are ready, aim, fire. Right? Understanding understanding the way that you show up in that. I'm just somebody who, I need a little ready, I need a little aim, and then I'll fire. And that just understanding that context about yourself is very important, because you'll get to the point where you realize, oh, I'm just looking at content to build an extra level of certainty that I'm never going to get.
Okay. So why podcast though? Because you could have gone, I feel like, a million other ways, right? So why podcast?
So many things now in retrospect that I didn't know at the time. One, I was a huge fan of Joe Rogan. I listened to Joe Rogan. Okay, that would be cool if I could do that. That was part one. Part two, I used to drive a truck. And when I drove this truck, I would listen to talk radio. So in the morning, I would listen to a show called the Hillman Morning Show. In the afternoon, I would listen to sports talk radio. And I remember thinking, Moses, I remember thinking at the time, imagine if you could work for 4 hours a day talking into a microphone and that was your job. That would be awesome. So a lot of it came from the imagination of seeing other people doing it. And it actually came full circle. For our, I don't remember what episode number it was. It might have been episode 32 or something. We actually interviewed somebody who was on the Hillman Morning Show that we used to listen to in the morning. We went to her house. She invited us over. I remember going to the beach after with my business partner and crying because of how surreal it was. That was a very full circle moment for me to meet somebody who actually inspired me to get into podcasting in the first place.
Okay, that's pretty cool. That is really cool. You mentioned a bottleneck earlier. What was your bottleneck, like the initial wall, the initial bottleneck that you ran into when you started doing podcasts?
Probably audio editing.
Okay.
That was the big thing, because I didn't want to pay somebody. And again, here's the other thing, right? In 2017, things were a little bit different. There were still freelance websites, and there was still access to freelancers and contracts and stuff like that, but it wasn't like it is today. So, audio editing was big, because I had to figure out how to actually record, how to change the levels, how to make sure there was no static, how to do an intro, how to layer music in, all of that stuff. And that was one big one. And then the second big thing was I wasn't doing anything virtually. So if I was interviewing you, you were at my house with me, and we were going to sit in my living room, and that's how it was going to go. So that was a little bit of a bottleneck in the beginning as well, because I didn't really understand the way tech was going. And now you and I are we don't even have to be in the same country. We don't have to be in the same time zone.
Right,
Nothing has to be the same, but you can talk across the world now.
So audio editing for you
Yes.
was a big one. So, okay, let me backtrack a little bit.
Please.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about starting a podcast?
Ooh, yeah, that is a great question. They think it's the thing that's going to work when nothing else did. So I had a call with somebody recently who said, yeah, I tried social media, I tried YouTube, I tried courses, I tried membership stuff. I know the podcast will work. Nope. This is not a mechanism of the platform. This is a mechanism of your expectations. The podcast will not work unless you make it work.
Yeah.
That has been the biggest thing that I have seen is people think a podcast creates demand. No. A podcast creates the opportunity for you to help it create demand, but it is not going to create demand for you unless you're already so far ahead in another area of life that you starting the podcast is just the next strategic thing to do, but 99.9% of us just aren't there.
Okay. Wow. So for me, the biggest misconception about starting a podcast was that I thought that you had to have everything put together before you can make the first episode, right? So I thought, okay, I need to get this microphone. So I'm seeing that all these podcasters are using, this brand and that brand. Okay, I also want to, make a video podcast. So, I'm pretty versed in the video area. So I know if I get this camera and that camera, okay, but then I need to treat the room too. Okay, I don't know anything about sound design. Okay. So it just became about, I need to have all these tools before I can start with the first letter of the alphabet, right? Before I can do that step one. But the reality for me ended up being, we got this microphone that we bought for $30. It ain't going to be good. It's not going to take us far. But the smallest possible step that I can take at the stage that I'm at is to just start with whatever I got. I can always remove the episodes. I can always like look back and cringe, and I feel like you always look back and cringe and the stuff that they've done. So for me, the biggest misconception was I had to have all the tools, all the right tools before I can start. What do you think of that?
That's another very common one. It's a very common one, and I would say that's one of the reasons people don't start. One of the reasons people don't start is because they think they have to start perfectly. One of the reasons people don't continue is because they don't get the results that they expected. When in reality, they were never going to get the results they expected, and it's never going to be perfect in the beginning.
Right.
To your point, we've done, as of today, 1,430 episodes or something. If you go look at the first ones, they are terrible. And I don't have this camera. I have a different microphone. This backdrop isn't what it is. I'm using like, but. I have no idea what I'm saying.
Right.
That's another misconception is we don't understand how much you can change when you do enough of the reps. So from day to day, progress is invisible. I did 6 podcast episodes yesterday. Measurably, I am no better today. But I am way better than I was 365 days ago, for sure. Right? From day to day, progress is invisible, but from year to year, it's impossible to miss. But a lot of us don't hang on long enough to actually see the progress, to recognize the contrast. That's another big one.
1,400 episodes. That is... what would you say that your average duration of an episode is? Half an hour? An hour?
Probably 25 minutes. We only do solo episodes now. So we don't do guest interviews anymore. So it's my business partner and I jamming on a topic, 25 to 35 minutes. Okay.
Wow. Because if it was guest related, I was going to say that is a lot of people they've talked to, a lot of time spent talking. And so my subsequent question to that was going to be I suppose I'm going to ask it anyways. What has doing podcasts, how has that influenced how you communicate with people? Because you create content, right? And you're communicating with people all the time. Has that become more of a job? Has that made you a better communicator? Has that maybe had zero influence on how you communicate at all? I don't know.
It has made me way more confident as a communicator. I'm married now, but when my wife was my girlfriend, She said, there's this event that I would love to go to. It's called Skip the Small Talk. And the theme, the theory, the thesis behind this is you go to an event with a bunch of other people and somebody facilitates having deep conversations. So you have words and you have questions and you have prompts, and the only goal of this entire thing is to have deep conversations with people. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this. I am so scared. I am so terrified. I don't want to do this. I'm not a great speaker. I'm so nervous. We went. And I had this moment where I said, oh my goodness, I might be the most confident person here when it comes to speaking. Because I do this in front of the camera, in front of thousands of people. Behind the scenes, this is nothing. That is when I really understood, oh, the reps that I've put in, they have just made me far more confident when it comes to having a conversation. And just humbly, I don't mean this with any ego, I just have more reps, right? I just have more reps, more repetition, more practice with higher stakes than most people. So it has definitely allowed me to become a more confident communicator. That's definitely it. It's helped me use better analogies. When I say something to someone and it doesn't land, usually I'm able to say, okay, give me a second here and let me run through the Rolodex. Okay, let me use this as an analogy. It's like an escalator. And then I'll use an analogy. So yeah, I think it's just helped me. It's helped me to actually add value to someone based on communicating and then having to communicate deeper if it's not landing.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. So then, what would you say to someone that is, they're starting in 2023, we're midway, towards the end of the year here, and they're thinking of starting a podcast, but they're like, the market is inundated. There's way too many podcasts out there. What is your advice for someone that is trying to start a podcast today?
Yeah, one would be just start. Don't overthink it, because for every day you spend thinking, you don't spend time doing, and you're probably going to regret it. That would be part one. Part two, everything is saturated. Everything is saturated. If your only differentiator is that there's not a lot of people doing what you're doing, that's good. I mean, that's a beneficial thing to have, but that's not a super strong mindset. That doesn't suggest that you're in it for the long run. You're just picking something that a lot of people aren't doing, so you think you can get a head start. I wouldn't bet on that working long term anyway. So the cream always rises to the top eventually. You have to understand that. So I would say creating the expectation. So if you are going to do it in 2023, have the expectation that almost nothing is going to happen for the rest of the year. You're not going to go viral, most likely. You're probably not going to get any huge guests. You're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. You might feel insecure. You're going to feel imposter syndrome. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. I would say all those things. And then I would say do whatever the lowest barrier to entry is. Maybe for you right now, it's not video. I work with a lot of different clients, many of which who are women. And they say, I don't want to have to do my makeup every time and, do my hair. And I always say, I can only imagine what that's like because I just throw on my hat, I throw on a shirt, and I'm off to the races. So if for you right now that's not doable, don't worry about it. Just get the audio version out. So I would say ask yourself or prompt yourself with these three words. One, sustainability. What is something that I can start sustainably? Two, what is something I can then do consistently? And then three, how do I improve every single time I do it? If you do those three things, that is all we've done for the last 6 years is one episode a week was sustainable. And then we did two, then we did three, then we did four, then we did five, then we did six, then we did seven. We did it consistently. We've never missed. And we're always trying to improve a little bit. If you can do those three things, you're going to be far and ahead of many people, believe it or not.
Well, can you expand a little bit more on this? So this is why I like to talk to people who have been doing something, anything that is relatively difficult across time, because that is where the challenge rises, right? It's across time. So 6 years and consistency. But like we all know that, okay, doing something day in, day out, repetitively across time, we're going to get better at it. But when it comes to like actually doing it, there's a huge distance between the conceptual understanding of consistency and the actual practice of it. So when it comes to the medium of getting on the mic, getting your voice ready, everything, day in, day out, or once a week, whatever your schedule is, how do you? Because I also have a podcast, so for me there's a time where I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. But then, I get into a podcast and I'm like, well, my goodness, that went really, really well. I remember why I started this to begin with. I remember why I enjoyed doing this. But it's the consistency across time that's really challenging. So how do you overcome the challenges of consistency? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making any sense here. Yeah,
absolutely. One is, to your point, remember why you started, right? One of the other big misconceptions too. You're not always going to want to do it. I don't always want to do anything. Really, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to, but when I do, I'm always grateful I did. I didn't want to record podcast episodes yesterday. I was tired. We drove 10 and a half hours home from a speech. I got not enough sleep, got up, and it's like, all right, we're going to do 6 episodes today. I don't want to do this. I want to watch Netflix. I don't want to do this at all. But I always tap back into, why did I start this in the first place? Anything you can do to systematize your recordings. So for us, we do 6 or 7 on one day. Mondays are our day. You cannot book on my calendar. You can't pay me money. I'm not interested. That's the day where we do all our episodes. So I don't have to get hyped 7 days in a row. I have to get hyped one day to do 7 episodes. That helps. That's helpful. Okay. And then this is also what I would say. You got to put some skin in the game. We have said this on our podcast so many times, we will never miss an episode. That's in our branding. It's in our intro.
Okay.
So self-improvement in your pocket every single day. Every single day. It's in our intro. It's in our branding. You have to have some sort of accountability built in because you're not always going to want to do it. And then this is the last thing. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the audience. Your audience, if you really do care about them as much as you say, prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it by showing up, because if you don't put out an episode and they want content, they're going to go find it and they may never come back to you. They may never, ever come back to you. That's something that I have an agreement with myself as well. And then I would just say the last thing, Moses, either I do what it takes to get the goal, or I do not complain. I don't get to complain about the fact that I don't get the goal. I know what I should be doing. I know. We all know what we should be doing, but a lot of us don't want it as bad as we say we actually want it. And that's the same for me in many regards. I'm dieting, I'm losing weight, but when we traveled, I had pizza every day. I don't want it as bad as I say I want it. If I did, I'd do more. I'd do better. So I would say those.
Okay. Can you elaborate more on the accountability part of it? So I'm pretty bad at like putting in place systems that will hold me accountable. So if I set goal A, I know that the likelihood of me failing is pretty high. I won't tell so and so that, hey, I'm gonna be doing this, because then I know, okay, if I fail, they're gonna remind me of it, and they will know that I failed. So I'm not gonna put any systems in place to keep me in check. So why is accountability so important, and how do you implement that in your own life?
Yeah, accountability is so important because the pain and discomfort of not doing something has to be greater than the pain and discomfort of doing it. I have a business partner. So every time I don't want to record, he's waiting for me. Every time he doesn't want to record, I'm waiting for him. It's built in for us, and we have a team, and we have people that are relying on us. That's a big piece of it. This is a good thing to do. Okay, I have this $100 bill on my desk at all times. This is a reminder to myself. When I was skipping workouts and I was letting myself down on repeat pretty much every single week, I went to my wife and I gave her this $100 bill. And I said, hey, I need you to do me a favor. And she said, sure, what do you need? And I said, if I don't go to the gym 7 times in a row this week, I need you to rip this $100 bill up in front of me. And she said, no way. I'm not going to do that. And I said, I promise you I won't fail. I just need a little extra motivation. I need a little extra necessity. I went to the gym every single day, and that began the process of me becoming more consistent. So I had this conversation with a client, 2 clients recently. They said, our business isn't growing, and we don't know why. And I said, okay, talk about it. Cool, strategize. I said, how many conversations are you having with people? And they said, oh, not many. And we're not really posting on social media either. All right, cool. This is what I want you to do. I want you to tell me something that's very near and dear to your heart. And they said, okay, I love going on walks with my husband, and the other person in the business relationship loves playing tennis. I said, perfect. Okay. Person 1, you are not allowed to go for a walk with your husband unless you post on social media that day. Are you in? And she said, oh my goodness, that scares me. And I said, it should. It should scare you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in. Okay. Person 2, you're not allowed to go play tennis unless you start a conversation with a potential client. Are you in? Same thing. That scares me. I know. It should scare you. I can tell you they have been wildly more consistent since they did that. Just because there is a perceived loss when we're doing something and when we're overthinking it and we don't end up doing it, we're not thinking of the potential long-term loss. It's very hard as humans to do that, because if we were wired that way, we would never pick up a cigarette and start smoking if we knew 50 years from today it could kill us.
Yeah, yeah.
But if it gave you cancer right away, most people wouldn't do it. It wouldn't make logical sense to do that. So, it's an attempt to use the human condition in our favor, where if we can think of the short-term pain of not playing tennis, not exercising, not being able to watch your favorite sports team on the weekend, you'd be more consistent. So that's what I would say to do. Now, it requires somebody else. It does. It requires somebody else, because if you're struggling to be consistent on your own, it's going to be really a challenge to keep yourself consistent by putting up your own boundaries. So I think you got to find somebody you trust, a partner, a business partner, a coach, an accountability partner. You do need a little extra help with that, because you'll do more for somebody else than you will for yourself as well. That piece is important too.
Yeah, yeah. So from all that, the word that keeps rising to my head is you need some sort of well cemented discipline in order to carry through that. Within the confines of the topic of creating a podcast, can you touch on being disciplined? So more specifically, so for me, I didn't record anything last week because I had the brilliant idea of wanting to become a pilot in 30 days and do the podcast at the same time. So obviously those two didn't go hand in hand. So I was like, well, one of them needs to take a back seat. And I am at the very end of my lessons to become a pilot. And it's the difficult stage for me, at least. But the discipline of, okay, you said it earlier, I don't want to anymore, but I have to because I have this goal, I have that, I want to do this. But in order to achieve that, I have to go through this difficult stage of pilot training, even at the cost of the podcast taking a small back seat. But I'm not naturally disciplined, right? It's something that I have to beat myself into it until it sticks, and that it doesn't always stay stuck. Is that how you say? I'll fall out, every once in a while. So can you touch on the importance of discipline when it comes to staying consistent in creating your episodes, holding yourself accountable, or finding someone to hold you accountable, but just discipline in general when it comes to creating podcasts, because you've been doing this for a good minute, and 1,400 episodes is no joke. So
yeah, it has to. So when I'm thinking of discipline, I think of 2 D's. I think of discipline and I think of design. If you're struggling with discipline, you have to double, triple, and quadruple down on design. So just as an example, if if you struggle with recording podcast episodes and every time you finish, you take down and break down all of your equipment, we have to design your studio better so you can just leave it up, right? My lights are on my ceiling. There's a switch on my TV. This microphone is plugged in all times. My lights are always here. Everything is always here. Nothing moves. Everything stays.
Yeah.
If I had to set this up every time, that's another excuse. Another excuse for me not to do it. Or, for a long time we had a studio. We had a custom studio, but it was an hour away. That's an excuse for me not to want to drive down there. Let me get rid of that. Let me do this at home because it's cheaper anyway. If you're struggling with discipline, I would argue that doubling and tripling down on design is probably something beneficial. Because if you're not super disciplined, you're going to have to rely on design. Now, if you're very disciplined, design doesn't matter as much. It can make discipline easier, but it's more of a supplement. Where if you're struggling with discipline, design might be the main course and the discipline aspect of it is dessert. So that would be the best answer I have. And then I would say you have to reverse engineer regret. You might regret not recording the episode 2 weeks from today. You're not going to regret it right now, because if you regretted it right now, you wouldn't not do it. But if you can take yourself into the future and say, I'm really going to regret it if I don't do that today. I'm going to let myself down again. And then I'm gonna vote for that. That's the vote that I'm putting in. That, you know what, I'm not that consistent anyway. My audience doesn't need me. It's at this point. It's taken a long time. But a lot of my habits now are harder to break than they are to do because I have such a streak going. I don't want to lose the streak.
Right.
I don't want to lose the streak. I want to keep the streak going. I got skin in the game. I'm invested. Right? The confirmation bias is there. The investment bias is there. So I believe you have to have a real, authentic conversation with yourself and maybe asking yourself, what am I really disciplined at? Well, I'm disciplined at going to bed on time. Why? Oh, because I value that. Then this is another important thing to ask. It's very hard to be disciplined in an arena that you do not believe is possible for you or will be worth it. If you don't believe being disciplined around the podcast is worth it, you won't do it. Because why would you? Why would you?
Right.
A diet that you don't believe is going to work is way harder than a diet that you know will. I would check in with a couple of those thoughts as well. Do I actually think I can do this? Is this possible? Is it going to reap the rewards that I actually believe it? Will it be worth it? If the answer to those is no, that's probably a good place to start.
I hate the idea of just the reality of how easy it is for bad habits to creep in. For you don't have to go out looking for them. Bad habits is just all over the place. The second that you let your guard down, bad habits, step in the way, and you just, you're done. You lose your progress. But to gain these good habits, it's just you gotta put in a lot of work. So it sounds like what you're telling me is, first and foremost, just remove obstacles. Make it a little bit easier for you to achieve the goal that you want to do. So for me, I travel relatively often. So having a set studio really just does not make any sense. And having a high quality camera with a tripod and everything and a soundboard and this really doesn't make sense either, because I would have to carry all that with me every time that I'm traveling, and then I have to set it up every time that I get a shoot. So what I do, I have the laptop, I have this portable microphone, I have the iPhone that's just attached to the laptop, and it's not the ideal studio that I would like, but given the circumstances that I'm in, it works. Right? There are no complications. It doesn't take too much to set it up. So I even used to have a tripod, but even that was another obstacle, because I gotta set it up, and then sometimes when I'm recording it starts to slide down a little bit. And I travel with a small backpack and a carry-on, so it's like, well, I'm just gonna do the whole continuity camera thing, and it works for now. But removing obstacles makes the discipline part a little bit easier. Is that what you're saying?
100%. And you even used the word that I used. You said it might not be ideal, but it's realistic. There's
right.
What's ideal for someone is not realistic for someone else. What's realistic for someone is not may be ideal for someone else. You have to figure out what your realistic is and what your ideal is. Realistic can move the needle. Realistic,
Right.
it's almost never ideal if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's almost never ideal. There's things I could do to the studio to make it better, different lights, right? There's a lot of stuff. But yeah, you have to check in with what's realistic. You wouldn't keep going if it wasn't realistic.
Right.
And then you'd never get the benefits of doing it enough times to say, oh, wow, they just came out with a new camera that's easier to move, or whatever it may be. Yeah, there's a lot of value in doing something for a long enough period of time, as long as you're improving a little bit. You're not going to get 100% better overnight, but if you get to the point where you say, wow, now I'm saying less than I ever have. Cool. That's a huge improvement. Okay. Awesome. And then you just stack those little wins over enough episodes and things start to happen.
I feel like I just got personally attacked because I say a lot. Okay. That is something that I need to work on. So I was just about to say now I'm like concentrating too much on it. So can you touch a little bit on burnout? I just said I haven't. Now
you're never going to be able to unhear it now because I brought it up.
Yeah. And I haven't had that yet. The feeling of burning out and producing too much content or working so much that because this does not feel like work to me. I'm almost always chasing a little kernel of truth in every conversation that I'm having, and so having these episodes is just, it allows me to it allows me to have the conversations that I want to have and grow a little bit every time that I have a conversation. And so I have not had the luxury, the curse, depending on how you look at it, of burning out. So, but for the likelihood that is in the horizon is high. So what can I keep an eye on when it comes to burnout? And how do I combat against that? How do you structure your life, your podcast recording, so that you have the off time so that you don't burn out? I guess that's the question.
I would say the expectation around burnout is directly connected to the size of the goal. That would be my argument for this. I do burn out. Okay. I do, and there's not a lot of balance in my life. I work a lot. And I am constantly under pressure, and I am constantly stressed out, and I'm grinding my face off. But I have to. I want to have the most successful self-improvement podcast on the planet. You don't get there by not experiencing resistance and not burning out and not facing hard mirrors and working yourself very, very hard. If you're out there, I would argue two things. One, when fulfillment goes up, burnout goes down. So if you're not finding ways to consistently fill your cup, you're most likely going to end up probably burned out at some standpoint or at some point. I don't necessarily think burnout is overworking. I think sometimes it's under fulfillment. So that's something I would throw out just as kind of an awareness thing. And then if you think of burnout, it could be a season. So every summer I find that I get burnt out because work is busier. I'm taking the kids and the family out all over the place, soccer practice, baseball practice, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not doing a lot of what I love. Okay. Or if when Friday comes around every single week, you can't get yourself out of bed because you're so burnt out, that's more of a systematic burnout. There's too much going on where you're not sustainably filling your cup. I would start with that question of, is this a seasonal thing? Is this every single week? What are the things that actually cause this? What am I doing way more of? What am I doing way less of? My wife and I had a conversation recently. We were going to go for a walk. And the day got later and it got later. And then we said, you know what, let's just watch a movie. And I said, babe, I really think we need to do a better job of doing the things that we know we'll be grateful for, because that's the stuff that fulfills us. Yeah, it seems like work to go for a walk when you don't really feel like it, but it is one of those things I believe that's going to fill your cup and probably lead to less burnout. So my relationship with burnout, I don't want to put on other people, because for me, it's par for the course. It is what it is. It's going to happen. I just try to get better and deal with it. If you're out there, it's completely different because the size of the goals probably aren't the same, and they shouldn't be most likely. So asking, what can I do more of? What have I done more of? What can I do less of? What have I done less of? I think the questions are the best place to start, I would say.
Wow. Yeah, because so for me, I'm a little bit on the other side of the spectrum where if you could just give me like 100-foot bed with like 1,000,000 pillows, I'll just, I'll stay on there. I'll eat all the grapes I can, and I'll, I look forward to that. But there are seasons for that, right? And when I'm out of that season, it's go, 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 go. As long as it does not come at the cost of the season of rest, right? So I will not allow myself to like when the season of resting comes, that's what it is. I will not produce any more than I want to. Right? But during the season of grind, if we put it that way, there is no rest. It's go, 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 go. But I've yet to find a balance for me where I'm like, okay, I can grind and rest at the same time. Because during the grind season, any amount of time that I'm resting, I'm like, I could be producing. Right? So, what do you think is the biggest challenge when it comes to podcasts? But if you've been doing it for 2 years, for example, right? You've been doing it for 2 years, and you don't quite have a good system yet, but you're not, it's not like you started 3 months ago, and most importantly, the growth is starting to plateau, or it seems as though your growth is starting to plateau. At the beginning, maybe you had a nice hockey stick growth, but now you're starting to plateau a little bit. The percentage of increase is a little bit lesser than at the beginning. How do you continue to put in the time, put in the work, when the growth does not seem to be just going up?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 billion question, really, because that's what most of us are going to experience. Yeah, you understand that this is par for the course. This is how it's supposed to be. I don't know if I could give any piece of empowering advice. The people who pop off and go viral, those are the exceptions to the rule, and most of them can't teach you how they did it. Most of us are going to have to do we're year 2 and there's not a lot going on. This kind of sucks. I thought we'd be further ahead. Let's do this. You're either going to think you should be further ahead or you think you should be further behind. I believe most of us are going to think we should be further ahead.
Yeah.
That's just a belief that I have. Then if you do get there and you say, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. It doesn't seem like it's working. It doesn't seem like anything's going to happen. I would say take a look back to the beginning and what's changed. Do you have 50 people that listen to the podcast? That's way better than you think. That's a really quite a large win, all things considered. Have you been interviewed on 15 other shows? Awesome. That's amazing. That's huge. Do you have a Facebook group now with 50 people who actually care? That's amazing. That's a big classroom of people. Yeah. I almost find that in the chasm between certain levels of success, we lose gratitude for what we've created. If the problems you have this far into your journey are the problems that you would have wished for at the beginning, you're probably doing something right. Believe it or not. Okay. Yep. Believe it or not. Yep. I had a moment recently where I was sending money to the team, and I wrote a $6,000 check or a $7,000 check, and I had a moment where I was like, man, this sucks. And then I also had a moment where I said, this is awesome. The fact that we can actually send $7,000 and just, it's amazing. I would have killed for that at the beginning. I was $35,000 in debt. Man, if I had money to send somebody $7,000, I would have been pumped. So that, I think that perspective, if you're 2 years in and you're surviving, you're greater than 99% of people because most people don't actually get 2 years in. And I think that's an important perspective to have.
That is really powerful. Gratitude. Practicing gratitude, even when it doesn't feel like you should be grateful for it. And I like what you said in the beginning, if I'm recalling it correctly. You said you don't really deserve anything unless you've, put in the time and worked for it. I would add a little bit. The only thing that I feel like I deserve is the human dignity there and the respect. It goes without saying, of course, but that's the only thing that I deserve is the human dignity, and I try to pass that on to other people as well, and assume, hey, here is the value that you bring onto the world. You didn't create it. It's there because you're here, right? But then anything that comes on top of that is what you work for, what you put in your time in, and whether you succeed, whether you fail, you take on the responsibility. And I'm gonna throw you a curveball here that just crossed my mind. What is your absolute earliest memory, my good sir?
Of life?
Yeah, as far back as you can go.
Man.
The first image, first frame that crosses your mind.
First image. I remember that one of the first places I ever lived. So I lived with my mom and my grandmother. We had this really long hallway. And I just remember running down that hallway. Like, it was like a little racetrack in our apartment. I remember how long, and it seemed like it was the longest hallway ever of all time. It seemed like you could run forever. I remember that for some reason, and I'm sure if I went back and visited now, it'd probably be a lot smaller than I originally had thought.
Yeah. I wonder why that memory stayed.
I know.
After all these years, huh? Okay. I don't know why I asked that. It's just like a little.
I love it.
A little tangent, and it's always interesting for me. Like when I ask that question to people, they always pause, and it's like, wait a minute, it's been a really, really long time since I've revisited this memory. But something never fails. People soften up a little bit. Their eyes get widened. Their mind just completely shifts to this, and it brings out a little bit of that the human dignity part that I was talking about. So that's the only thing that we deserve is the dignity that we have as humans, but we don't really deserve anything. So the reason I bring that up is when I think that, man, and you mentioned this before we start recording, profitability is not in the horizon for at least another couple of years, and so, but this is something that I enjoy doing. I want to make sure that I keep doing it, even if there's no money coming in and out. But then sometimes reality kicks in, and you're like, oh man, I've been doing this for so long, and I'm not seeing any results. I'm starting to plateau. I am nowhere near plateauing now. I've just started. I'm still growing. But it's something that I'm starting to see with other creators, and some fall off, right? After having gone through so much growth, and after so many people had fallen off, they were able to rise through the ranks. But then even then, 3-4 years in, they fall off and then they plateau. I don't know, what the reasons are there, but I'd like to think that plateauing can have a toll on a lot of us. So that's why I asked. I was like, hey, what are the things that I can kind of look forward to and kind of plan for, even though you can't really plan for, because like you said, most people wouldn't even tell you why they succeeded. It's just a conversation
or they don't
that I'm
know.
not hearing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I know a lot of people behind the scenes who are really successful. They couldn't tell you how they did it, and I don't mean that negatively, right? That's
right.
For some people that's just par for the course. But the best question you can ask somebody is, how did you do it, and why do you do the things you do today? And if they don't have an answer, right, it's going to be. I had a client, a potential client, ask me the other day. They said, "What can I expect if I work with you?" And I love that question because my answer is pretty much the same every single time. Depends on how much work you're going to put in. Depends. It's I'm not going to guarantee you anything because I don't know the level of effort you're actually going to put in. It depends.
Right.
Are you gonna stay consistent? Are you actually going to listen to what I say, or are you going to sign up because you think it's going to make your life easier? It will. Yeah. But if you want to grow, your life's going to be more challenging, right? I love when people ask that question because I just want to give you the truth. I don't think it is going to be easy. I don't expect it to be easy, because if you go to the gym and you have easy workouts, you don't grow. You don't. That's just not the way it works. That's not the way the body works. I don't believe that we deserve to go viral. I just don't. I don't believe that. I don't believe that we should be the most successful podcast on the planet at this point. I haven't done enough. I haven't helped enough people yet. I haven't put enough value out into the world yet. So we're gonna keep doing that. We're gonna keep doing that. One of the things that frustrates me the most, Moses, is when I see ads that say, "We guarantee we can launch you as a top 5 podcast, a top 10 podcast." It's creating entitlement. I've launched top 5 podcasts. It's not hard when you have an audience, but most of these people don't have audiences. You're not gonna launch a top 5 show unless you have an audience, most likely. And it's just creating that entitlement. It's creating those expectations that are setting people up for failure, because when you don't launch a top 5 show, you think you suck. When in reality, most people will never launch a show like that. It doesn't mean you're not the exception, because you're not. You're the rule, and that's okay. Most of us are going to be the rule.
Wow, it's crazy. 50 minutes already went by. It's just, shoot, I just said, I find a lot of gratitude when I talk to people that have been doing, like I said earlier, doing something that is difficult across time. And so, and you've been doing this for 6 years in the world of podcasting and just tech related, YouTube. That is a long minute. It's a very long minute. And so, in that spirit, I don't know if you can share this, but like, what is your next biggest milestone that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, this year, really, our goal is to cross 1 million listens total and $1 million total through the business. That'll be our next milestone, is 1 million and 1 million.
Okay.
Then after that, who knows? But yeah, that's the main focus for the rest of this year.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it will be just creating more business infrastructure stuff. There's a lot. That's the other thing too. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that nobody ever sees. Like, we have a lot of business offerings, and we have a lot of clients. We don't make money from the podcast itself. We don't run ads. We don't do sponsorships, right? So that's another misconception, is most of us are going to make money from the podcast. Most of us will use the podcast to make money in other ways. That's another misconception. But yeah, I would say the million. That's the next big milestone for us.
I hope that comes true.
I appreciate it.
That comes true, and I'm sure you guys are hard workers and putting your best foot forward.
Thank you.
So, any final thoughts that you would like to leave the audience with?
I would say the biggest difference between who you are today and who you want to be eventually is your habits. So just make sure you're trying to do the right things every day. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do everything every day. You don't have to get everything done every day. But if you can do one positive thing every day, I do believe your future self will thank you for it. And that's in your relationship, that's in your fitness, that's in your education, that's in your podcast, whatever it is. A little by little, things add up.
Your future self will thank you for it. I like that. If people want to look you up, do you have any social media presence? Where can people find out more about you and your podcast and business?
Yeah, I always just say search Next Level University. We're on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube. You'll get to know us at a very deep level. And then the best place to reach me on social media is Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. Questions, comments, concerns, podcast, business, whatever it may be, send me an audio, send me a video. I like when people send me audios and videos because I know it's outside of the comfort zone a little bit. So it's always a good challenge to send out.
Yeah. Kevin Pilometti, thank you so much for coming to the Moses Kabandana podcast.
My pleasure, my friend.